So I spent a lot of time studying Tai Chi. It's a martial art, but it's a softer internal art, right? In the martial arts, we study self-defense, right? But there's a little riddle built into that. You know what it is? If you get the right training and the right discipline, you might be able to defend yourself from yourself. That's what self-defense means, really, at the highest levels, because you're defending yourself from your ego, biases, hatreds, and insecurities. Those are the real killers, right? People study karate. There's somebody coming down the street throwing a club at them, you know, or some like weird ancient Chinese sword. No, it's not really. You really don't need that skill, right? But it's all that discipline so you can defend yourself from your own craziness. So in activism, we organize, right? You always hear it over and over. We've got to organize. But there's a riddle here too. Our organizing has to begin with ourselves. Because that inner congruence to have the power, gives us the power to organize others. So that's the fundamental power of Thoreau, of Gandhi, right? Great story about Gandhi. Mother comes to him and says, Bapu, they call him Bapu, his father. Bapu, please tell my son to stop eating sugar. His teeth are going to rot. And Gandhi says, please come back in 2 weeks. You know, she's not going to quibble. She leaves, comes back 2 weeks later, waits in this long line of all these people want to get their questions answered by Gandhi. She says, we're back. It's been 2 weeks. Please tell my son to stop eating sugar. Stop eating sugar. It's terrible for you. You're upsetting your mother. It's bad for your teeth. She says, thank you so much. Why did I have to come back in 2 weeks? He said, that's how long I knew it would take me to stop eating sugar. Right? That's authentic. That's like an extreme version of authenticity. Extreme. Nelson Mandela, right? Probably the most powerful modern social change figure alive today, right? He began finding himself in that prison cell and then organizing one prison guard at a time. Right? But it started with that riddle. It was like self-defense. It was self-organizing. So what I'm talking about here is really a philosophy of joy, because this sense of wonder rooted in our authentic self gives us the power to positively affect the world. And it's not to be confused with being soft. We have to be fierce. I love this fight that we're in. Do you guys know the author Alice Waters, Color Purple? So she just wrote a book of poems. And she was just interviewed on an NPR show, Michelle Martin's Tell Me More. Right? You guys know that show? Anybody listen to that? Michelle Martin's very, very cool show. So she asked Alice Waters, what is it that continues to enable you to grow and be so creative? Alice Waters gave this answer. She says, I find life. So this is a person, if you know her story, she was abused, raped, just the most horrible situation, upbringing, right? I find life to be endlessly fascinating and incredibly marvelous. I learned that if you focus on something, if you are present to it, she means life there, it is constantly revealing itself to be absolutely magical. Right? So if you think of how depressed you can get from listening to the newspaper, listening to the news, oh, there's a Tea Party, that, you know, that's pretty depressing stuff. Alice Waters, who's been through more than most of us, hopefully, will ever have to go through, she finds life to be absolutely magical. So what's her new collection of poetry called? Hard Times Require Furious Dancing. Isn't that cool? Right? There's somebody who knows how to deal with this stuff. And yet, why do I need you guys to get this and engage this? Because we're part of an environmental movement that's become more of a self-protective community. That's at the same time hostage to the polluting forces that have also co-opted our government agencies, legislative bodies, sometimes even school boards. Our movement went from a great early run of victories while President Nixon was eager to get attention off his bombing of Cambodia to an industry of bureaucrats Trained in policy, afraid to ask for too much, spending more time doing political handicapping than kneecapping. Meanwhile, the polluters fund most politicians of both parties and have in their service pay-to-play scientists, think tanks, thousands of lobbyists, of course, and front groups for all seasons and messages. Nevertheless, the more difficult our situation became over the last several years, the more dogmatic many of our environmental colleagues became over policy. Right? What I mean by that, I hated the fight around cap and trade. You know, the big climate bill in the Senate, and that passed in the House, didn't get anywhere in the Senate. I was told we had to buy off the opposition. I disliked that bill from the start because I didn't think it would solve things or even get us off to the right start. It had massive handouts to coal, nuclear, the financial companies who wanted to do the trading. It had absolutely uncertain benefits of reducing CO2 emissions. And yet my colleagues were telling me, not Greenpeace of course, they fought it, Friends of the Earth fought it, a couple others, but most got herded into it, and it was a mess. But they told me, oh no, this is realpolitik, John, you got to understand this is the real world, we need this. Right, so great. So if you tell me we've got to lie, cheat, and steal to win, then you better at least win. Right? They didn't even get a vote. They didn't even get a vote. So now as the environmental movement, it looks like we're willing to give everything away to get nothing. Really? Realpolitik? I don't think that's what Lyndon Johnson would have done. Right? All right. So our losses should by now have humbled us, and that knowing that the hourglass is running low. Humility should enable us to listen better and try new approaches. Like what? Like no longer listening to the Democratic Party. Environmentalists have been in this bad relationship for too long. It's an appeal to consider party politics last. Right? I'm not saying we all got to vote for Ralph Nader. I'm saying we don't want to take our lead from either party, from any party. We're simply not good at the partisan political game. It's not what we even care about. Let's create pressure, crude, heavy, relentless pressure on politicians who would prefer us to be reasonable, regardless of whether they are Dems or Republicans. And we should let go of our hope that we can take the polluters across the finish line. Duke Energy, Peabody Coal, Southern Company, BP, and ExxonMobil. Yes, we're up against Goliaths, but they do us even more harm in the guise of friends. In a movement, the answers are emergent. Nobody stands in the front and says, here's what the answer is. And if anybody does that, they're wrong. They're not a movement leader. Because there have to be multiple answers and multiple things that get tested. And every time you test something, it doesn't like work or not work. It does some things that you learn from and then you do more and more and more. I spend my time doing opposition work now. I want to know what polluters are paying what front groups to lie. And the more I expose that, the less comfortable they are, the more their fingers get peeled away from the solutions, and the more our politicians of both parties want to step away from them. This is what happened with the tobacco companies and the tobacco lobbyists. Both parties used to run cover for the tobacco companies, but they got so embarrassed for research that they hid, for intentionally doctoring the addictiveness of their product, that finally politicians said, you know what, sorry, we enjoyed all the money, we can't take it anymore. Right? That's what we need to, that's what I want to make happen with this stuff. That's what I personally work on. Right? And I believe that until we change our polite approach, the momentum will be lost forever. We had it when Gore rolled out his movie. We had it when Katrina hit Louisiana. But we've lost it since then. And we need to get it back. We've got people now even attacking the reality of climate change. So the opposition work, that's my approach. But what I want from you is, one by one, you bring a new generation of your own authenticity, power, and ideas to this great struggle. I want to help you do that, regardless of what the ideas are, right? Because you're going to have ideas I never could have thought of, right? So ultimately, to me, this thing, if I had to say it's about one thing, it's about spirit. So you can call me naive, but I don't think this is a gloomy fight, right? Gloomy is for a philosopher who has too much time to think about something, right? I don't have time, I don't have the luxury to think about this as being gloomy. I love this fight. It's worth weighing into every day and fighting like one of the chosen hobbits, right? Or like hobbits. We have the added luxury Oh, we don't have to sleep out on, on those rocky ground. We get to return to loved ones at night. We can share food and rest before the next big day. And on weekends, our work practically requires that you fish, hunt, ski, watch birds, surf, hike, garden, cook, whatever it is that gets a dirt on your fingernails and sand in your shoes. So, we're happy warriors. We're chosen for a role in the greatest fight since those little fellows had to get rid of that nasty ring by throwing it into the fires at Mount Doom. We're lucky. We're blessed. This is a beautiful place to be. This is a beautiful place to protect. Thank you.